Hello and welcome to the program. It's fantastic you could join us.
Today we're going to ask the question, is your kitchen a safe place? Or more to the point, are you a safe person to be left alone with your kitchen?
We'll meet a guy who lost 35 kilos using simple lifestyle principles.
Wow, 35 kilos. But first up, let's take a look back at some of the initial reactions to the appointment of Pope Francis. Has your view changed since then?
And I'd like to also welcome Dr. Jerry Goldman. How are you, sir?
Good and great to be here.
Yeah. Now, Jared, you head up the Broken Bay Institute in Sydney. Is that right?
That's right. Just at Pennant Hills in Sydney. We're part of the University of Newcastle, so as a theological institution, being part of a secular university, it's quite a significant thing in Australia.
Okay, so you focus on it's distance education mainly, isn't it? In Catholic theology specifically?
Well, distance is now quickly turned into online education,
Sure.
just to make that comment. But our theology reaches all people. So yes, we're a Catholic provider, but we try to provide theology in a way that engages with any person, including people of no faith.
Okay.
And that's quite interesting that that's happening at Newcastle.
So you have some of those students, do you?
We have those students in our classes,
Oh,
and,
wow.
and some of them rank the theology classes, surprisingly, the best classes that they've gone to, because it stimulates their thinking,
Wow.
stimulates their understanding of other people, and I think that's partly the reason that they're
Okay.
coming in. But we suspect they're also searching, but we'll leave that for them to let us know that. Yeah.
Sure. Now, Jared, we asked you here specifically, I guess, because we're looking for someone who can give us a little bit of insight into the appointment of the Roman Catholic Church's new Pope, Pope Francis. And I understand, have you travelled to the Vatican? And
I have had the privilege of being at the Vatican with my family. Amazing place, of course. But this is, I think, truly an extraordinary appointment in the history of the Church, as many listeners would know.
Sure.
First Pope from the Southern Hemisphere, we like to say over here. And as the South Americans are saying, certainly the first from that continent.
Yes.
First Jesuit, which is a particular religious order that has great significance in the Catholic Church, and we might talk about that later.
Yeah.
And the first Pope to choose the name Francis, and that's also quite a significant thing.
What is the significance of that, would you say?
There was some thought that maybe it was a nod to Francis Xavier, who
one of the founders of the Jesuit
orders.
Yeah.
But very quickly, the story unfolded that no, it wasn't Francis Xavier; it was Francis of Assisi. There was a lovely little story that the cardinal next to him, when it was announced that he'd reached the 2/3 vote that was needed, said to him, "Remember the poor. Whatever you do, remember the poor." Bergoglio has reflected on that during those little bit of time between him being voted, and found himself immediately thinking of Francis of Assisi, who many of you would know was close to the poor. But he's also mentioned there was two other reasons why he chose Francis's name. Francis was a great man of peace.
Yeah. He famously travelled during the Crusades.
Absolutely.
And actually met
with the sultans and always received well, at great risk to himself, but because of his peaceful nature and his message of peace.
He was also seen as being very close to the earth, wasn't he?
And that was the third nod, the nod to nature. And he mentions humankind at the moment doesn't have a great relationship with creation, does it? He asked that question. And I think that challenges all of us, or all people of goodwill. Are we close to the poor? Are we trying to support the poor? We know that 3/4 of our world's population is really struggling.
Sure.
We know through all the wars that are going on in our community, amongst nations, even domestic violence, all of that. We know we're struggling with peace, and we know we're also struggling in our relationship with nature.
So before he was appointed as Pope, did he have a record of engaging with these issues in Argentina?
I think it's becoming widely known now that he's been a man who's lived simplicity, and it sounds like from a long time. When he was made Archbishop of Buenos Aires, one of his first actions was to sell the palatial Archbishop's residence. Not rent it out, not just to sell it, because he found the symbolism of a bishop, of a leader of the church living in grandeur to be antithetical to the gospel.
Wow.
So that's incredibly significant.
It's very Franciscan too, isn't it, really?
For a Jesuit too, I think, you know, it's that message of being on song with the poor. So he chose to live in an apartment, people know. He cooks his own meals. He goes by public transport wherever he can. All things that ordinary good folk listening and watching us can think, gosh, we can do that. We may already be doing that. Maybe we can do more of that.
Now, so the Jesuits in South America, of course, have a reputation of being quite politically involved, often in you know, liberation theology and left-wing causes. But I understand the new Pope isn't necessarily of that ilk? Or is he? I mean, considering some of what you're saying.
It's interesting, and there's some questions about the situation under the military junta back in the 1970s. I think it's important to note that Pope Francis, by his nature, is theologically conservative. We're not expecting any significant changes on the theology of the Church.
So that those who are hoping for an end to celibacy or something radical or women's ordination, it's probably not going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen and be raised very highly under his watch. But I think the engagement with the community, the engagement with the people, he's got this lovely phrase, I haven't heard it elsewhere, like that we often hear being engaged with the world. He has a phrase, being engaged with the streets. And that's quite a grounded thing. Like
it's very grassroots.
Yeah, and it's interesting, even as now as Pope, he's apparently already made some impromptu visits out into the streets of Rome. And I think this must be just part of his natural sense of engaging with people. He doesn't want to be locked up and put away from people. He wants to engage with them. He wants to walk the streets with them. And back to that early comment in his South American days, he certainly, even though theologically conservative, he asked his priest, he challenged his priest, are you with the people in the slums? And under his watch as Archbishop, he doubled the number of priests working in the slums.
Wow.
So
that's
now,
it's not just talk, it's a
this
practical...
is not talk now, and he's not talking, he wasn't, this is like liberation theology, which, you know, parts of it can be branded as left-wing or whatever. Francis was keen, I guess, let the actions speak. You know, the theology's rock solid, but where are we putting our efforts? And if we're putting our efforts with the people of the slums, with the disenfranchised, that's where the gospel comes alive.
Okay, now just before we finish, and we're not going to be able to do this justice, but obviously the Catholic Church around the world is, you know, struggling with issues of clergy abuse. There's the whole Vatileaks scandal with, you know, how is the Vatican dealing with their finances? Do we think Pope Francis is going to be likely to, you know, a new broom sweeps clean sort of thing?
Well, it's interesting, and by gosh, what a challenge he has. You know, it's firstly, you said about the church around the world. The church around the Catholic Church population around the world is mostly in the so-called two-thirds world.
Sure.
40% of Catholics are in South America.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's clearly a nod to this is about time, long overdue, that we have a Pope, a leader, coming and representing and living and breathing that world and that experience. So he's going to bring that practical orientation. Now, the questions that you raise, he's going to have to deal with, and that's going to be a tough call for any Pope.
Sure.
What he does bring in is that he has never wanted to come to the Vatican unless required. So he's never been after, in all his lifetime, after an appointment to the Vatican. So it signals maybe he will have a very strong position on some of the abuse issues that are before us. I think his commitment to the victims, to the poor, I would expect will have a strong resonance with victims of sexual abuse and tidy up the Church's errant behaviours that have happened in that area. I think he will be committed to that. A person of the poor, if there are financial issues that are under review, I can't imagine him not wanting to address that and address that quickly.
Yeah.
But he certainly will need our prayers and our support in getting through that machinery of the Vatican, you know, the public service, if you like, of the Vatican. That's what the Curia is.
Yeah.
For someone who hasn't wanted to be there, I'd imagine it will be a challenge.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for your time today, Dr. Jerry Goldman.
Thank you.
You know what, Dora, it's a bit confronting, for me anyway, you know, because I'm not a Catholic. I don't agree with a lot of things that the Catholic Church says, but still I find that Pope Francis does and says things that I think we need to see and hear.
Yeah, well, you know what, Ken? Just because you disagree with someone, it doesn't mean you can't learn from them. Honestly,
True, yeah.
like if we only learnt from people that were right all the time, we could only learn from perfect people, and there's not too many of them around.
Well, present company accepted,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Good point. Time for a break now. We'll be back in a minute.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Hi, welcome back. Now, we're all trying to eat healthier, but is it possible that we're sabotaging ourselves just by the way we organise our kitchens? You had a good chat with Surat about this, didn't you?
I did, Dora, and it was very enlightening. Check it out. Well, you've been there. I know I've been there. It's late at night, you're stressed or maybe just bored. What do? You open the fridge, you open the pantry, and you grab something. Something sweet, something salty, something fizzy. It's not good for me, is it, Sue?
It could be detrimental.
It could be detrimental. It's a problem of willpower, isn't it? I mean, you know, how can we just not make those bad food decisions?
Many people think it's a problem of willpower, but the research actually shows that we make more than 200 decisions about what and when we eat on autopilot.
Wow.
Which means it's not about willpower, because most of what we do is not about willpower. It's really about designing our environment to support our health goals. So really, when it comes to health and well-being, we should design the environment.
Well,
so
what do you mean by that? Design
your kitchen, your car, your glove box, your handbag, what's there will determine what you eat and how much you eat.
Okay.
So one of the first things we do at my clinic for people that want to get healthy and live better lives is get them to do a kitchen audit. Okay. We get them to have a look at what's in their pantry, in their fridge, in their freezer, and to make a list of these food items, cross out those that they know they really don't want to eat and remove them. Get them out of the house, out of sight, out of mind.
I have to confess something. So if it was my house, I could tell you how we'd remove them. We'd eat
or
them.
Give them to friends. So that's a really important first step.
Yeah,
Second step is
so step one, get rid of the food that you know isn't good for you. Okay.
That's going to trip you up. Second step is replace it with food that you do want to eat more. So for example, get those whole foods, natural, minimally processed foods in the house and put them at eye level.
Okay.
There was one interesting study that Brian Wansink did, who's a food psychologist, and they got people to swap their fruits and veg from the crisper, put them on the top shelf in their fridge, and put the other foods back into the crisper that are not as healthy. And they found that within just 1 week, people tripled the amount of fruits and vegetables they consumed.
Wow, just from switching shelves around it in the fridge.
Supermarkets know this, which is why they have the most profitable items at eye level. So we need to use that bit of advice and implement it at home as well.
There you go. Wow.
So whether it's the fridge or the pantry, for example, I put my legumes and whole grains in glass jars at eye level. So when I open that cupboard door, I am prompted to think, what can I cook tonight? Or when was the last time I cooked these black beans, and rotate those choices.
So it's not just about snacking, it's about like cooking a meal as well.
All of that, that's right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And even in our freezer, for example, you can keep things there that would otherwise go into the bin that are super healthy.
Speaking of which, what the dickens is, that is revolting.
It's one of those brown bananas that people often chuck out throw them into the bin. But what you can do with that, Kent, to reduce food waste is just peel it, break it up into chunks and freeze it.
Okay.
And later, when you're feeling like it's a hot day and you feel like having some ice cream, puree that up and make a beautiful, creamy, real banana ice cream.
Oh, okay.
Or toss it into a smoothie.
What would you just the banana by itself?
It's amazing how when it freezes up, the texture of the banana lends itself to a creamy gelato type ice cream.
Wow.
So it's about getting rid of the stuff you don't want to eat, replacing it with good, minimally processed natural foods, putting them at eye level or visibly somewhere to prompt you to eat, and decluttering your kitchen, because they've shown cluttered kitchens make people snack twice as often.
Wow.
So cleaning up your environment, doing it all by design, will greatly help you with your health and well-being, rather than just relying on that willpower, which doesn't work.
That's great. Great tips. So there you go, folks. Keep your health at eye level, and every time you open the kitchen, your fridge or your pantry, it'll be staring back at you. Do yourself a favour, have a healthy snack. Thanks so much for your time today, Sue.
Pleasure, Kent.
Really appreciate it.
Oh, I could so relate to what you were saying, Kent, about cleaning out all that junk food in your kitchen by eating it.
Oh, yeah, the last blast.
Yeah.
I guess it shows, that our attitude needs to change when it comes to junk food, because as long as we see it as a special treat rather than a way that we're abusing our bodies, basically, we're only ever an arm's length away from a binge, really.
Yeah, and you know what? It helps that all you're going to get when you do reach out is like a handful of almonds or a carrot.
Yeah, it all works together, I guess, doesn't it? Let's take a quick ad break now. We'll be back in a sec.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hi, welcome back. Now, the InFocus program often emphasised the importance of eating healthy, but I don't think, Kent, we've ever interviewed anyone with such a spectacular story of transformation from healthy eating as Paul Rankin.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Let's take a look. Well, if the profusion of health and lifestyle and weight loss programs on commercial TV is any indication, people are really interested in improving their health. And we have Dr. Paul Rankin here this morning who shares that passion. Is that right, Paul?
I do, very much so.
And this goes back to a personal story for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, Kent, I had been overweight since I was 16. And in my late 40s decided to make some significant changes, lost 35 kilos in weight.
Wow.
And experienced the incredible difference that sort of change in lifestyle can make. My figures all improved, my cholesterol, my fasting plasma glucose, but it was the energy I had and the things I could do that I couldn't do before.
Wow, that's incredible. So what sort of strategies did you put into place? Some pineapple juice diet or something? Or
No, it was the very simple strategies. It was a whole food, plant-based diet with some exercise.
Okay.
And it was a matter of being careful about what I ate, but making sure it was whole food and plant-based really helped.
Does this explain your passion for the complete health improvement program, CHIP? Because this is an area where you're working now and something that you strongly advocate for. You've even done your research, done a PhD in this area. Is that sort of related to your personal experience?
Yes, very much so, very much related to my personal experience. As I said, I experienced the benefits myself and was very keen to share these with other people.
So you went through the CHIP program yourself, did you? Or was it sort of similar lifestyle
It was a very
changes?
similar lifestyle, adopting what were the CHIP principles.
Okay.
I actually discovered the CHIP program about 18 months after I made the changes myself, and thought, yeah, that's what I did.
Okay.
And it provides a way that we can take these principles and share them in the community.
Okay. All right. So the Complete Health Improvement Program began a few decades ago, didn't it, in the US under the...
Yeah, Dr. Hans Deal developed the CHIP program after working with Nathan Predigan.
as in the Predigan diet.
As in the Predigan diet.
Yep, yep.
About 28 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah, in the States. And then in 1996 they filmed sessions, which became the basis of the old CHIP program. And then 3 years ago we completely updated the CHIP program, produced a new CHIP material.
Okay. And in the process, the ownership of CHIP passed from the US to here in Australia, didn't it?
Correct. CHIP is now actually owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the South Pacific.
Okay. But it's still available in America. And
Still available in America, worldwide. I'm actually going to the Philippines in March to do some training for CHIP in the Philippines.
Okay. All right. Now, one interesting story about the CHIP program is New Zealand, where you were living previously before coming here to Australia. Can you tell us just a little bit about how the CHIP program looked in New Zealand, and perhaps how it looks now, and what sort of impact that was making on communities there? Yeah,
look, we had some dramatic impact on communities in New Zealand. Had about 40 different communities in New Zealand running the CHIP program in their community, and saw some dramatic changes in those communities, from Maori communities up in the far north to farming communities, Hawara, to South New Zealand, Christchurch, Blenheim, and saw so many people have dramatic changes. I was talking to someone on Saturday who's lost 70 kilos doing the CHIP, 32-year-old, lost 70 kilos from the CHIP program, made an incredible difference in his life.
That is incredible. So can you just help us picture what, if I say I'm doing the CHIP program, what am I doing?
Okay, the key principle of the CHIP program is for people to adopt a whole food, plant-based diet, which means vegetarian, for want of a better term, and using those foods as close to grown as possible with minimal processing. And then getting exercise, drinking water, some stress management techniques.
Okay, but the program itself, it involves what sort of educational sessions in a group setting?
The program itself is 18 sessions, and each session consists of a 45-minute video presentation, and then some cooking demonstrations, group interaction, exercise classes, exercise components.
Okay.
And
aren't there also like health tests, like
correct,
medical people come in?
And at the start of the program, they do some health tests, people's height, weight, blood pressure, take some blood tests to see what their cholesterol's doing, their fasting plasma glucose, blood sugar levels are doing. And then 30 days later they repeat those tests, so people get very positive feedback about what's happening and the changes happening.
So it's a month-long program?
It's actually 3 months. The first month is intensive, and the second 2 months are a follow-up to help cement the behaviour changes.
Okay, all right. Now the research you've done is actually looking at the effectiveness of CHIP. I mean, it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
On paper,
yes,
but the fact is,
lots of stories, but was it scientifically valid?
The fact is, I mean, here we are, towards the beginning of the year, and how are your New Year's resolutions going?
Yeah.
A lot of them involve diets, and we all know that we start and then we fail. And what sort of level of success does the CHIP program have? Don't just tell me the story of one person who lost weight. Like statistically, is it actually more successful than a New Year's resolution? You know what I mean?
And Kent, a couple of things were involved in the process, but essentially we looked at the results of 5,070 people who'd been through the CHIP program.
Okay.
Looked at the results before and after,
yep,
and saw dramatic changes, 11% drop in cholesterol. 45% of those who had fasting plasma glucose blood sugar levels indicative of type 2 diabetes no longer had blood sugar levels at the end of that, of the 30 days. These results were published by the American Journal of Cardiology and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. When they saw those results, and that article said they were the most clinically significant results ever published in the literature for lifestyle change. And this is not just 2 or 3 people, this is 5,000 people.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable sample size.
It's a very good sample size. The other thing we did was we went back to a town in New Zealand called Hawara, where we'd had 400 people do the program, and looked at 106 of them who'd done the program more than 4 years ago, on average of 4 years ago.
Okay, so this is sort of the longitudinal thing, the over time, okay.
And of those, they were still 3.5 kilos lighter than they were when they started their program. Their blood sugar levels were still better, their cholesterol levels were still significantly better 4 years later. Which was, and the British Medical Journal Open published those results.
Okay.
Because you'd normally expect people's weight to go up over a 4-year period, but it didn't. It stayed down.
Okay. Well, clearly you're a chip evangelist. I can see that.
No question about it.
You're very keen. That normally chip is provided in a church hall sort of setting, like people from the community pay the fees and they come in. Is it a sneaky evangelistic method though? Is this a way to turn people Adventist without realising that this is what's happening?
No, not at all. Look, Christ worked by healing anyone that came to him.
Yeah.
10 lepers came to be healed. Only one of them came back again. And there's no record of the other 9 suddenly getting leprosy again.
Yeah,
Christ provided that because that's what people need.
Sure.
We're in a society now where people desperately need these lifestyle changes that CHIP offers.
Sure.
So the Seventh-day Adventist Church has got on board with that. They're offering it as volunteers in the community, offering CHIP program to whoever wants to come along with no strings attached whatsoever.
Wow, well, that's incredible. So if I want to know more about the CHIP program, is there a website I can...
The website to go to is chiphealth.com. Go to chiphealth.com. You can find out where the nearest CHIP program is, by locate CHIP. There's a whole pile of data there, all the scientific articles are up there, and you can go there and have a look, and chiphealth.com is the website.
Thanks very much, Paul. Really appreciate your help. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much.
Oh, he is such a fun guy.
Yeah, wasn't he just like jumping out of his skin, I reckon? He was so excited.
Well, he should be excited. He's seen his life changed. He's seen other people's lives changed. Why wouldn't he be excited?
Yeah, well, fair enough, I guess. Well, it looks like our time is up for today. We're excited. Thanks so much for joining us on the couch.
Have an awesome week. God willing, we'll see you next time.
All the best.
As scholars studied these ancient scrolls, they discovered that about half of them were handwritten copies of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. They also knew from the handwriting style that many of the documents had been written more than 100 years before the birth of Christ. For generations, scholars had argued about the Bible's reliability. In all that hand copying, had errors crept in? Had mistakes been made? And had the Bible stories become more fanciful? Well, scholars now had 2,000-year-old copies for comparison.
To receive a free DVD of the documentary Beyond Belief, visit hopeoffer.com/belief or call 1300 300 389.